The Galactic Confederation's scout ship Harbinger drifted silently into Earth's orbit, its adaptive camouflage rendering it invisible to human detection systems. Captain Melkor stood on the command deck, his translucent skin shimmering under the ambient light as he studied the blue-green world below. "Primitive," he muttered, mandibles clicking in mild disappointment. "Another Class C civilization." Senior xenobiologist Villa Noxter nodded in agreement as she compiled her initial assessment. Her six-fingered hands danced across the biosensor interface, cataloging human physiological data. "Physically fragile," she reported. "Minimal natural defenses. No claws, weak musculature, vulnerable skin. Their only advantage appears to be unusual stamina and thermal regulation." The Confederation Council, governing over 300 advanced species across 17 galactic sectors, had established clear protocols for first contact scenarios. Class C species required minimal security precautions. These civilizations invariably responded to advanced technology with awe rather than aggression. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Zixal of the crystalline Tyranno species prepared for humanity's formal introduction to galactic society. His iridescent form towered over his minimal security detail as his shuttle descended toward the chosen contact site, a United Nations complex in Geneva. "Is this security complement sufficient, Ambassador?" asked Lieutenant Thrix, his chief of protection. Zixal's crystalline features arranged themselves into the Tyranno equivalent of a dismissive smile. The threat assessment teams found no cause for concern. These humans lack even basic interplanetary travel capabilities. Their weapons are primitive chemical propellants and crude atomic devices. The formal meeting commenced in the Grand Assembly Hall before representatives from all Earth nations. Cameras broadcast the historic event worldwide as Zixal addressed the assembly, his words translated through advanced Confederation technology. "The Galactic Confederation welcomes Earth into the community of known civilizations," he announced, noting how the human delegates displayed visible emotional responses: widened eyes, increased respiratory rates, micro-expressions of excitement and apprehension. Such obvious tells would make them terrible negotiators by Confederation standards. In the third row, Dr. Eleanor Chen, chief sinolinguistics expert for the United Nations, observed the alien delegation with professional curiosity. Something about their body language suggested condescension, though she couldn't be certain when dealing with such fundamentally different beings. The diplomatic exchange had progressed for 23 minutes when the first explosion shattered the west wall of the assembly hall. Black-clad figures swarmed through the smoke and debris, their weapons trained on both human and alien delegates. "Death to alien corruption," one shouted as they opened fire. Ambassador Zixal froze, his crystalline form unable to process the sudden shift from diplomacy to violence, a common reaction among Confederation species, who evolved in environments where threats were rare and flight was always preferable to fight. What happened next would fundamentally alter the Confederation's understanding of humanity. Dr. Chen, a 52-year-old academic with no combat training, launched herself toward Ambassador Zixal as a projectile streaked toward him. Her body intercepted the bullet meant for the alien diplomat, the impact throwing her backward against his crystalline form. Simultaneously, the human security personnel responded with coordination that stunned the Confederation observers. Rather than fleeing or protecting only their own leaders, they formed defensive positions around mixed groups of humans and aliens alike. Captain Michael Okonkwo of the UN Security Force barked orders as he dragged an injured Tyrannoid behind a fallen column. "Secure the ambassadors." Defensive pattern Delta. The human security forces moved with practiced efficiency despite never having trained for this specific scenario. They improvised weapons from broken furniture when ammunition ran low. An unarmed diplomatic aide tackled an attacker twice his size. As medical teams finally secured the area, Ambassador Zixal stared at the wounded Dr. Chen being rushed to emergency medical transport. "Why?" he asked a nearby human official, genuinely confused. Why would she risk termination for someone she met mere hours ago? The official, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead, gave Zixal a look the alien couldn't interpret. Because that's what humans do when others are in danger. We protect. In his diplomatic pouch, Zixal's secure communication device chimed urgently. The initial classification report for humanity needed immediate revision. Video footage of the Geneva attack spread through the Confederation's neural networks with unprecedented speed. On the Confederation capital world Nexus Prime, the evaluation chamber had never been so crowded. "Replay the security feed again," ordered High Commander Vrax, his chitinous exoskeleton clicking as he leaned forward. The holographic display showed Dr. Chen throwing herself in front of Ambassador Zixal, the bullet's impact rendered in clinical detail. "Inconceivable," muttered General Krill of the Vorathi Defense Force, his scaled skin flushing green with alarm. "This contradicts all established synapsychological models." The chamber, a vast amphitheater designed for dispassionate analysis, buzzed with agitated debate. Evolutionary biologists, military strategists, and cultural anthropologists from a dozen species clustered around different displays, each showing aspects of human behavior that defied Confederation understanding. "They fought thousands of wars against themselves," exclaimed Science Director Peltora, her feathered crest rising in distress as she displayed historical footage of human conflicts. Their recorded history is primarily a sequence of battles, interspersed with brief periods of uneasy peace. The Military Assessment Division presented findings that sent ripples of concern through the assembled experts. Unlike every other known sentient species who evolved to avoid danger, humans evolved to face it head-on. Their bodies produced chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol that actually enhanced performance when threatened. Most disturbing, noted xenobiologist Trelvar, is their psychological response pattern. When cornered, instead of surrendering or fleeing as rational beings should, they often become more aggressive and creative. A junior researcher quietly activated another display, showing humans rushing into burning buildings to save strangers, diving into turbulent waters for rescues, and standing against overwhelming military might for abstract principles like freedom. "Their entertainment media glorifies this behavior," she added. "They call it heroism and consider it the height of virtue." The debate raged for days. Some council members advocated reclassifying humans as a potential Class A threat species, capable of violence beyond their technological level. Others, including Ambassador Zixal, argued that this same trait made humans valuable potential allies. Meanwhile on Earth, humanity was experiencing its own paradigm shift through diplomatic channels and, unofficially, through data breaches by human hackers. People learned that the galaxy was far more dangerous than initially presented. In the White House Situation Room, President Adeyemi studied classified Confederation star charts with his Security Council. The holographic display highlighted the territory of the Drax Imperium in pulsing red. "They're a hive mind species," explained General Rivera, pointing to biological data acquired from Confederation databases. "Their neural structure makes them incapable of empathy. They don't conquer, they consume." Intelligence Director Cheng stepped forward. "We have confirmation that the Geneva attackers used weapons incorporating Drax technology. The attack was a test. They wanted to assess our capabilities and our relationship with the Confederation." The president's expression hardened. "Then they've learned we protect our guests, no matter who they are." He turned to his cabinet. "Initiate the Phoenix Protocol. Full mobilization, but keep it quiet. We don't want to alarm the public or tip our hand." Across Earth, nations began discreet preparations. Military reserves were called up under the guise of training exercises. Technology companies pivoted to defense applications without public announcements. Scientists who had been competing found themselves collaborating on weaponry and shield designs. In his temporary quarters at the United Nations complex, Ambassador Zixal composed a message to the High Council that would be considered heretical by many of his peers. "I must caution against classifying humans as a threat species," he recorded, his crystalline form shimmering with conviction. While they possess capacity for violence that exceeds Confederation norms, their protective instincts extend to allies and even strangers. This trait, properly channeled, could make them the most valuable addition to the Confederation in generations. He hesitated, then added, "However, I must also warn that underestimating them would be our gravest error. If humans ever perceive the Confederation as a threat to their world or their principles, there will be no force in the galaxy that could compel their surrender." As his message transmitted across light years, automated sensors at the edge of the solar system detected the first signatures of approaching Drax vessels. Commander Alexis Chen stood before the hastily assembled Earth Defense Council, her new uniform still stiff against her skin. The conference room inside Mount Kilimanjaro Command Center hummed with tension. Through reinforced windows, massive construction drones converted commercial spacecraft into military vessels, welding equipment creating cascades of sparks against the African night sky. "The Drax Scout fleet will reach our system in 17 days, she announced, pointing to red markers on the holographic display. 7 vessels, each roughly equivalent to our largest aircraft carrier in size, but with energy weapons capabilities we can only theoretically match. The Confederation representatives shifted uncomfortably in their specially designed chairs. Trelvar, the reptilian military liaison, cleared his throat. "We must be realistic," he said, his translator conveying his discomfort. "Our nearest battle group is 3 sectors away. You'll have to hold out on your own for at least 2 standard months." Rather than despair, the human representatives exchanged determined glances. General Okonkwo, recently promoted after his actions during the Geneva attack, leaned forward. "Then we'll do what humans have always done," he said. "Adapt and overcome." Within hours, a global transformation began. School gymnasiums became manufacturing centers, with 3D printers running continuously to produce specialized components. University physics departments shifted focus to shield technology, while biochemistry labs worked on counteragents to Drax biological weapons identified in Confederation databases. In orbit, the first converted vessels took shape, everything from retrofitted cruise liners to hastily armed mining platforms. Most shocking to the alien observers was humanity's psychological response. The Confederation contingency algorithms had predicted riots, hoarding, and societal breakdown. Instead, they witnessed something their species could barely comprehend: collective purposeful calm. Dr. Kai Nakamura, head xenopsychologist for the Confederation observation team, attempted to explain to his superiors. "Humans call it the spirit of the Blitz, referencing the historical period of aerial bombardment," he reported. "When facing extinction-level threats, they often become more organized and altruistic, not less. It defies our evolutionary models." In Sydney, children helped convert home entertainment systems into components for drone swarms. In Lagos, former rival gang members worked side by side converting automobiles into mobile defense platforms. In Rio, programmers volunteered around the clock to develop targeting algorithms. Ambassador Zixel toured a repurposed automobile factory in Detroit, now producing modular shield generators. He watched humans working 12-hour shifts, their focus absolute despite their obvious fatigue. "Your people should be panicking," he said to Dr. Maya Patel, the facility coordinator. "The statistical probability of your success is virtually 0. Dr. Patel smiled tiredly. "With respect, Ambassador, humans have never been good at accepting statistical probabilities when our survival is at stake." Later that day, Zixel observed a Confederation psychologist attempting to explain to Admiral Okonkwo that Earth's situation was hopeless based on all available data. The Admiral laughed, a sound that startled the alien expert. "Let me introduce you to a concept from our history," Okonkwo said. "We call it humanity's finest hour. It's when we're at our best precisely because the situation appears hopeless." In his private quarters that night, Ambassador Zixel sent an encrypted message to his superiors. "They're not preparing to survive. They're preparing to win. I strongly advise against underestimating this species. The message transmitted just as Earth's long-range sensors detected the Drax scout fleet dropping out of hyperspace near Neptune. They were arriving ahead of schedule. In the Kilimanjaro Command Center, Commander Chen received the alert and immediately activated the defense grid. Her expression remained calm as she addressed her staff. "Ladies and gentlemen, the enemy has arrived early," she announced. "They think it gives them an advantage." Her lips curved into a slight smile. "Let's show them how humans respond to surprise attacks." Throughout the solar system, converted Earth vessels moved into position, their crews, many with less than a week of training, preparing to face an enemy that had conquered dozens of more advanced worlds. Against all Confederation predictions, not a single human ship fooled. The Drax scout fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their obsidian vessels arrayed in a hexagonal pattern that reflected their hive mind precision. Commander Vexlar of the Drax Vanguard extended his sensory appendages over the tactical display, 4 of his eye stalks monitoring different sectors, while his primary eye remained fixed on the mission timer. "Primitive defenses detected," reported the tactical node. "Minimal energy signatures. Estimated resistance negligible." Vexlar chittered in satisfaction. This backwater planet should be a simple claiming operation. Establish dominance, accept surrender, begin resource extraction. The Drax collective consciousness had assimilated dozens of worlds using the same protocol. His confidence faltered when the sensor array suddenly registered unusual energy fluctuations throughout the solar system. "Anomaly detected," warned the tactical node, moments before hundreds of miniature jump signatures surrounded the Drax formation. Retrofitted cargo pods materialized, releasing clouds of metallic dust enhanced with nanites specifically calibrated to interrupt Drax sensor frequencies. The information had been gleaned from leaked Confederation defense files, adapted by human engineers in just 8 days. "Countermeasures ineffective," reported the tactical node as the Drax ships fired blindly into the expanding clouds. "Sensor capacity reduced to 30%. The real human attack began from an unexpected vector, below. Learning from Confederation technical data that Drax vessels had minimal shielding on their ventral surfaces due to a design philosophy that never anticipated attacks from beneath, the main Earth fleet had positioned itself in Neptune's shadow. Aboard the retrofitted cruise liner Defiant, Captain Imani Washington watched her volunteer crew operate weapons systems with just 3 days of training. Their faces shone with sweat, but remained focused as they executed combat maneuvers that Confederation tactical advisors had deemed theoretically sound but too risky for any rational species to attempt. "Target locked," reported Lieutenant Diaz, a former commercial pilot. "Firing solution ready." "Execute pattern Delta," ordered Washington. "All hands brace for high-G maneuvers." The Defiant and 30 other converted vessels accelerated at forces that pushed the limits of human physiology. Their improvised inertial dampeners strained as the ships executed a corkscrew attack pattern specifically designed to confuse Drax targeting systems, which had evolved to counter the more predictable movements of Confederation vessels. "They're adapting," shouted Diaz as the Drax ships began to coordinate their fire more effectively. "Our starboard shield is failing." Captain Washington's expression remained calm. "Diversion Team Bravo, execute kamikaze protocol." Near Jupiter, 5 unmanned cargo ships loaded with mining explosives activated their engines. Guided by remote pilots on Earth, they accelerated toward the Drax formation at suicidal speeds. The Drax, following standard doctrine, diverted significant firepower to neutralize these apparent suicide attacks. This created the opening Washington had anticipated. "Main fleet, converge on target Alpha," she ordered. "Exploit the gap." Earth vessels poured through the temporary weakness in the Drax formation, concentrating fire on the lead vessel's ventral surface. The Drax shield collapsed under the concentrated barrage, and the obsidian ship fractured into pieces. For the first time in 9 centuries of expansion, the Drax collective consciousness experienced something unexpected: doubt. The battle raged for 6 hours as the remaining Drax vessels, attempted increasingly desperate tactics. Human ships took devastating hits, their crews continuing to fight even as life support systems failed. When communication was lost between vessels, captains improvised based on pre-planned contingencies rather than retreating. Commander Vexlar, his ship badly damaged, initiated emergency hyperspace protocols as the last two surviving Drax vessels fled the solar system. "Transmit priority alert to the main armada," he ordered, his voice tinged with an emotion unfamiliar to the Drax. Fear. The humans do not respond according to established patterns. They require special protocols. In Earth orbit, the battered human fleet regrouped. Despite their victory, Captain Washington allowed no celebration. "Begin salvage operations immediately," she ordered as medical teams treated the wounded. "We have days, not weeks, before their main force arrives." On the Confederation observation post, the alien military advisors watched in stunned silence as humans immediately began stripping captured Drax technology for analysis and integration. "Remarkable," whispered Trelvar. "They fight like they have nothing to lose, even when they're winning." The Grand Council chamber of the Confederation erupted into chaos as the transmitted battle data displayed across the massive holographic dome. Representatives from 300 species shouted over each other, while emergency projections flashed red across the chamber's curved walls. "Impossible," roared the hegemon of the Vol Dominion, his tentacles lashing against the speaking podium. No Class C species could defeat even a single Drax scout vessel, let alone 5. "The data must be corrupted," insisted Science Director Peltora, her feathered crest fully extended in agitation. "The tactical patterns make no logical sense. No species would willingly sacrifice vessels as diversions." Ambassador Zixol fought through the crowd to reach the central platform, a data crystal clutched in his crystalline hand. The chamber fell silent as he inserted it into the projector. "This footage was recorded by our observation post," he announced. "It is uncorrupted and verified." The recording played, showing human ships deliberately taking devastating hits to create openings for their allies. Many council members recoiled at such wasteful tactics. A smaller vessel positioned itself between a Drax energy beam and a damaged Earth ship, sacrificing itself completely. "Their behavioral algorithms are incomprehensible," muttered a Confederation tactical analyst. "They prioritize collective success over individual survival. It's evolutionarily unsound." While the Confederation debated, humanity raced against time. In a repurposed automotive factory in Detroit, Dr. Sofia Mendoza led a team of scientists reverse engineering a captured Drax power core. The facility operated around the clock, its parking lot filled with temporary housing for workers who refused to leave even for sleep. "The quantum folding technology should take decades to understand," stated Kelvin, the Confederation technical advisor assigned to the project. "Your species simply doesn't have the theoretical foundation." Dr. Mendoza smiled tiredly, dark circles under her eyes after 72 hours without proper rest. "You're thinking linearly. We don't have that luxury." She gestured to her improbable team: quantum physicists working alongside ceramic artists, automotive engineers collaborating with biologists. The Confederation approach to research, with rigid disciplinary boundaries, couldn't comprehend this chaotic cross-pollination of ideas. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Javier Rios, a ceramics artist who had volunteered due to his experience with crystalline structures, noticed a pattern in the power core's lattice. "It's not symmetric," he pointed out, manipulating the holographic model. "Look, it's more like a living structure, like coral." That insight shifted their entire approach. Within 11 days, not decades, Dr. Mendoza's team cracked the fundamental principles of Drax power generation. Kelvin watched in disbelief as humans modified and improved upon technology that had taken the Drax centuries to perfect. "You work at an unhealthy pace," he observed as researchers subsisted on stimulants and minimal sleep. The exhausted physicist laughed. "Welcome to crunch time," she said. "Humanity's secret weapon." the ability to ignore our biological limits when necessary. In the Confederation's High Security Council, the debate had shifted from disbelief to strategic implications. If humans can defeat a Drax scout fleet with improvised technology, what might they achieve with access to our advancements? Asked Council Elder Morith, her ancient voice silencing the chamber. They could become a threat greater than the Drax themselves, warned Security Director Kravnar. Ambassador Zixel stood again. Or the greatest allies we've ever known, he countered. They don't seek conquest, they seek survival and cooperation. In deep space, the main Drax Armada altered course, accelerating toward the Sol system. The hive mind had analyzed the scout fleet's defeat and reached a consensus. The human anomaly must be eliminated before their unpredictable tactics could spread to other species. The Drax Overmind, a vast biological computer integrating the consciousness of billions, experienced an unfamiliar sensation as it processed the battle data, the earliest neurons of fear beginning to fire within its ancient network. On Earth, as news of the approaching Armada reached the Defense Command, Admiral Okonkwo studied the tactical display showing hundreds of enemy vessels converging on their position. "They're coming with everything they have," observed General Rivera soberly. Okonkwo's expression remained determined. "Good," he said simply. "That means we only have to win once." Admiral Helena Ortiz stared down the Confederation Security Council across the negotiating table, her patience wearing thin. The circular chamber aboard the Confederation diplomatic vessel glowed with soft blue light, illuminating the diverse alien representatives who held Earth's fate in their appendages. "Let me be clear," she said, her voice steady despite 40 hours without sleep. "We don't need your permission to defend ourselves. We need your technology." The holographic displays behind her showed the approaching Drax Armada, hundreds of warships against Earth's cobbled-together defenses. The odds were beyond grim. Security Director Kravnar, his exoskeleton gleaming under the lights, clicked his mandibles in agitation. Providing advanced technology to a species with your tendencies violates multiple Confederation protocols. "Your protocols won't matter if the Drax consume this sector," countered Ortiz. "You've contained them for centuries through avoidance, not confrontation. We've proven we can fight them effectively." After 16 hours of heated debate, the Council reached a compromise. Earth would receive limited access to shield and propulsion technology, but weapons advancements would be withheld. The decision reflected the Confederation's lingering distrust of humanity's combat instincts. Within days of the technology transfer, human engineers implemented the new systems in ways that left Confederation experts stupefied. At the Chicago Advanced Defense Laboratory, Chief Engineer Galvik watched in horror as technicians integrated a Heisenberg compensator into Earth's planetary shield network. "You can't modify a compensator like that," he protested, multifaceted eyes widening. "The efficiency loss would be catastrophic." Dr. Jin Park continued calibrating the device without looking up. "Efficiency isn't our goal," she explained. "We're creating deliberate weaknesses in the shield that we can trigger tactically." Galvik's translator struggled to convey his confusion. "Why would you intentionally weaken your defenses?" Dr. Park smiled. "So we can fire outward through specific coordinates while maintaining protection everywhere else. Your shields are impenetrable but static. Ours will be dynamic." Meanwhile, Captain Tariq Nazari led Earth's first diplomatic mission to nearby star systems aboard the Horizon, humanity's first FTL vessel. The ship's corridors were cramped, its systems jury-rigged combinations of human and Confederation technology. Their first destination was Vril Prime, homeworld of an insectoid species the Confederation classified as marginal contributors. The Vril had been denied advanced technology sharing for centuries due to their position in the Confederation hierarchy. "The Confederation told us you are primitive warriors," chittered Sub-Matriarch Kivex as she received the human delegation in her subterranean hive chamber. "Why should we risk Drax attention by allying with you?" Nazari didn't offer empty promises or elaborate speeches. Instead, he played the unedited battle footage from the Scout Fleet engagement. When it concluded, he said simply, "We don't care what the Confederation thinks of you. We care whether you want to be free." Kvex's antennae quivered. The Confederation called us too aggressive and emotional for advanced technology sharing. It seems humans share these traits. Nazari smiled. Precisely why we understand each other. Similar scenes played out as the Horizon visited the aquatic Nereids and the gaseous Erins, species marginalized within the Confederation's rigid hierarchy. While Confederation diplomacy relied on complex protocols and carefully calculated advantage, humans offered respect, honesty, and a shared purpose. As the massive Drax fleet entered the outer Sol system, they were met with a sight the hive mind couldn't process. A defensive line including ships from 7 previously unaligned species, their diverse vessels integrated into a cohesive battle formation. Ambassador Zixel, watching from the Confederation observation post, felt his crystalline structure resonate with a startling realization. Humans had achieved in weeks what the Confederation couldn't accomplish in centuries, creating unity through mutual respect rather than dominance. They don't follow the hierarchical imperative, he recorded in his observations. They build alliances through shared struggle and recognition of value and diversity. This may be more significant than their tactical innovations. On the bridge of the Earth flagship Humanity's Hope, Admiral Ortiz reviewed the tactical display showing their improbable coalition facing the overwhelming Drax force. All Allied vessels confirm ready status, reported her communications officer. They're standing firm. Ortiz nodded, a peculiar calm settling over her as she faced what most species would consider certain doom. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Operation Thunderclap begins now." The darkness between Mars and Earth, filled with the obsidian shapes of the Drax Armada, so numerous they temporarily dimmed the sunlight reaching the red planet. Across a dozen command centers on Earth's surface and in orbit, tactical displays flared with thousands of enemy signatures. Lieutenant Commander Eva Jacobs stood on the bridge of the retrofitted destroyer Resilient, her hand steady despite the impossible odds displayed on her tactical screen. As second in command of the Allied fleet's Beta Wing, she had responsibility for coordinating the smaller, faster vessels that would be crucial to Operation Thunderclap's success. "All ships report ready status," her tactical officer announced. Allied vessels confirm synchronization of targeting systems. Jacobs nodded, taking a deep breath before opening the fleet-wide channel. "This is Beta Actual. Commence Phase 1. Throughout the solar system, the combined human and Allied fleet engaged their engines simultaneously. The formation appeared chaotic to Drax sensors, a desperate, disorganized defense attempting to cover too much space with too few ships. Aboard the Drax command vessel, Hive Commander Xeric observed the enemy movements with all 5 of his eye stalks. The central neural node processed the tactical data and reached a conclusion that resonated through the entire Hive consciousness. Victory was assured. "Primitive tactics detected," reported the tactical node. "Separation of forces indicates lack of cohesive strategy. Advance and neutralize." The Drax fleet surged forward in perfect geometric patterns, their weapons charging as they closed on the apparently disorganized defenders. What the Drax couldn't know was that humanity had made a revolutionary discovery. During the technology exchange, Dr. Mendoza's team had taken an approach to studying Drax systems that no Confederation scientist had ever considered. "We've been looking at this all wrong," Dr. Mendoza had explained to the Earth Defense Council 3 days earlier. "Everyone approaches Drax technology as an engineering problem. But there's a biological component we're missing." While Confederation scientists had always studied Drax systems through the lens of physics, human researchers noticed similarities between Drax shield modulations and certain neural patterns found in Earth organisms. This cross-disciplinary insight led to the development of an electromagnetic pulse weapon that essentially gave Drax systems the equivalent of a seizure. As the Drax fleet closed to optimal firing range, human captains executed maneuvers that their alien allies could barely watch. scraping shields against asteroid debris to create sensor-confusing dust clouds, deliberately taking hits on reinforced sections to protect more vulnerable allies, and accelerating to speeds that pushed structural integrity to the breaking point. Phase 2 initiation in 30 seconds, Jacobs announced to her battle group. All ships prepare to execute maneuver Chimera on my mark. The smaller vessels of Beta Wing abruptly changed course, appearing to flee in disarray. The Dracs predictably adjusted to pursue what they perceived as easy targets, exactly as the human tacticians had anticipated. "They're taking the bait," Jacobs reported to Fleet Command, moving into position for Phase 3. Across the battlefield, Humanity's Hope, the flagship commanded by Admiral Ortiz, engaged the Drax command vessel directly. The massive converted carrier took devastating hits as it closed distance with the much larger Drax ship. Deck after deck reported catastrophic damage, yet the vessel continued its advance. "Admiral, structural integrity is failing," reported the damage control officer. "We can't sustain this approach." Admiral Ortiz's expression remained calm as she opened a channel to all hands. "This is your Admiral speaking. Evacuation order issued for all non-essential personnel. Bridge crew and engineering will remain at stations." She turned to her executive officer. "Initiate final approach sequence. Arm the pulse device." The badly damaged flagship accelerated toward the Drax command ship on a collision course. Rather than ejecting in escape pods, the bridge crew locked in coordinates. For Earth and all free worlds, Ortiz transmitted on an open frequency before the Humanity's Hope rammed the massive vessel and detonated the pulse weapon at point-blank range. The electromagnetic cascade rippled through the Drax command ship and nearby vessels, temporarily disrupting their shield harmonics and neural control systems. Throughout the Drax fleet, ships suddenly lost coordination as the hive-mind connection faltered. "All units, execute Phase 4. Shouted Commander Jacobs as she observed the momentary weakness. "Convergent fire on designated targets." The Allied fleet surged forward into the gap, weapons blazing at the vulnerable Drax vessels. Across 1,000 kilometers of space, the battle transformed from inevitable defeat to chaotic melee as the Drax formation broke apart under the onslaught of seemingly suicidal, but perfectly coordinated attacks. In the Confederation observation post, the alien military advisors watched in stunned silence. "They're not just fighting," whispered Trelvar. "They're winning." Sunlight streamed through the crystalline dome of the Confederation Grand Chamber as humans took their seats at the Council for the first time. The formal reclassification ceremony, attended by representatives from over 300 species, marked a seismic shift in galactic politics. High Counselor Varthon, his ancient form hovering above the central platform, activated the ceremonial recognition matrix. The holographic display above the human delegation shifted from the neutral gray of unclassified species to the deep blue of Class A civilizations. In recognition of demonstrated capabilities and contribution to galactic security, the High Counselor intoned, "Earth is hereby formally classified as a Class A species with the unprecedented subclassification of Catalytic Ally, acknowledging their unique ability to inspire transformation in others." Commander Jacobs, now Admiral following her leadership during the Battle of Earth, accepted the designation with a formal bow. Behind her, representatives from the Vril, Nerades, Aarons, and 4 other formerly marginalized species watched with newfound pride. Their contribution to the victory had earned them seats in a newly formed Alliance Council with equal standing to the ancient Confederation powers. In the 6 months since the battle, the galactic power structure had undergone transformation at a pace that alarmed many traditional Confederation members. A third of the Drax fleet had been destroyed, another third crippled, and the remainder had retreated to their core systems, the first defeat in their 9-century expansion. Ambassador Zixel, now promoted to High Minister of Interspecies Relations, approached the central podium to present his analysis to the assembled representatives. "The human capacity for adaptation under threat represents an evolutionary path none of our species followed. He explained as holographic displays showed human neural activity during crisis situations. While most sentient species evolved to avoid danger through hierarchical structures and technological solutions, humans evolved to transform fear into action and to find strength through cooperation with diverse groups. The display shifted to show footage from the battle. Human ships protecting alien vessels, species with ancient enmities fighting side by side, and the moment when Admiral Ortiz's sacrifice had turned the tide. Most significantly, Zixel continued, humans demonstrate a unique paradox. Their history shows aggression and conflict, yet when faced with extinction, they become more altruistic, not less. They fight more effectively for others than they do for themselves. In the diplomatic quarter, representatives from the formerly marginalized species now occupied a coalition chamber designed by human architects, circular with no head position, symbolizing their equal standing. The Alliance, as the new coalition called itself, already hosted increased trade and technological exchange outside the Confederation's rigid protocols. The Drax Imperium, its collective consciousness fragmented by its first defeat, had withdrawn into isolation. Intelligence reports suggested the hive mind was experiencing unprecedented neural restructuring as it processed the concept of defeat. As the first human colony ships departed for the stars, carrying mixed crews of humans and alien allies, the Confederation quietly implemented new defensive protocols based on human tactical doctrines. Species that had never communicated now shared research and resources, inspired by Earth's example of collaboration across boundaries. During a private reception following the ceremony, a senior Confederation security official approached Admiral Jacobs. "There's something I've been wanting to ask," he said hesitantly. "How does your species manage to remain so resilient in the face of overwhelming odds? What is your secret?" Jacob smiled and considered the question before answering. An ancient human warrior named Vegetius once said, "If you want peace, prepare for war." But I think our real secret is this. The most dangerous creature isn't the one with the sharpest claws, but the one with everything to lose and nothing to fear. Throughout the galaxy, advanced civilizations began studying human history with new eyes. Archaeological teams excavated Earth's ancient battlefields, anthropologists analyzed human cultural responses to crisis, and military academies incorporated case studies of human conflicts into their training. The Galactic Historical Society commissioned a comprehensive study titled "Pressure Creates Diamonds: The Human Response to Existential Threat." Its conclusion would be taught to generations of interstellar diplomats and military strategists. Humanity's greatest achievement wasn't surviving countless disasters, but emerging from each one stronger and more united than before. As Earth established its place in the galactic community, the question that had once been asked in fear, "What are humans capable of when faced with danger?" was now asked with hope. The answer had transformed the galaxy forever.